Hey everyone, and welcome back to Chefs of Indian River County. I'm here today with Chef Ryan and Chef Daniel of Maison Martinique, located inside Caribbean Court Boutique Hotel on South Beach in Vero. Guys, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Tom.
Thanks for having us.
You're welcome. I wanted to jump into first, a couple months ago I was here and I did a video called Luxury Staycation. I actually stayed at the hotel, swam in the pool, went to the beach, had a really great time here, and I dined at the restaurant that night. And there was a standout dish. I think you said it's from your Somerset menu, so I think that's going to come back next summer. But the pork chop that I dined with was fantastic. Super tender, lots of flavor. You guys want to tell me a little bit about that dish? Because I'm really curious about...
Well, I'll mention that part. So during the summertime, we do a sunset menu, which is usually under $30 a plate. But as far as that pork product goes, is that it's a ribeye. And so what we've done is we've cut it down where it's a certain portion for that type of product, and then we grill it, and then we finish it off with a demi, I believe, and it was a mushroom demi, red wine demi, and then it accompanied with whatever starch and vegetable we had for that day.
Does there anything you do to that pork chop to make it more tender, or is it just the product itself?
When you look at it raw, it looks like a piece of Wagyu.
Really?
So much marbling in there. It comes out so juicy as long as you cook it medium, and it just melts in your mouth because of all that intermuscular fat.
Sure.
And it's a good product.
I do remember that.
I think the word is Duroc.
Is it Duroc pork?
Yeah. Yes.
Duroc is it's almost like a heritage breed, if I recall, and I know that the flavor and texture of those is unbelievable. All right, guys, I'm curious to learn a little bit more about your history of cooking, and I want to know, where did you get your culinary experience from? Did you guys go to culinary school? Or did you learn in the trenches like a lot of chefs do? Or tell me a little bit about that.
Chef Ryan, go for it.
All right, so I started out young. My stepdad, he was a chef at country clubs around the area. So I went to school of hard knocks first. And then some things happened. I had an uncle out in California, and he's like, you got to do something if you want to get serious about this. So he helped me get out to the Culinary Institute of America out in Napa.
Nice.
And then I ended up staying out there, worked under some great Michelin star chefs, and just grinded. And for the last 5-6 years, I've been running some pretty amazing restaurants out there.
Nice.
And second to that, with him, he's also traveled the country a couple times. Been in Nantucket, I believe, and Martha's Vineyard and whatever.
Nice.
So he's able to do that game, and that's why him and I eclect, for lack of words, in our senses of direction with the food process, especially now here at Maison Martinique and in the future. And as far as my background goes, real quick, as you know, Thomas, is that it was the 70s. I grew up in the restaurant business when there were big restaurants, all European chefs. It was the beat down of the mindset until you gave in.
Sure.
And so as time went on, I was trained French culinary in my teens and worked myself through my 20s. And then as time went, I did my travels around the country myself, and I came back to Vero, and I've been here ever since, and we had this opportunity to open this restaurant. So.
Sure. The first opportunity that I met you a while ago was in the back of a Shell station, and it was called Wise Guy's Kitchen. Yep. I remember that very well. Your food was delicious back then. I knew you were going to do great things here in Vero. Specifically, I think your wife did the peanut butter pie. You also did a really killer BLT sandwich. I remember that stuff. Things stick in my mind when they're really good. And
that was our test kitchen. We were testing to see what we could do, and that was after my stint in a whole other industry of culinary, and brought me back to Vero Beach to do that.
Sure, fantastic. Yeah. Let's jump into the questions. We got a few questions here to ask these guys. What do you think is the most important thing you learned in culinary school or at the School of Hard Knocks? I mean, I've heard that a lot of chefs say they learn the basics in culinary school, but then really getting in and working is where they got the most experience from. So tell me a little bit about your experience with that.
So because I was already pre-established before I went to culinary school, a lot of it was, reiterated things, stock sauces. but I guess it taught me more discipline and more finesse. And while I was there, I worked for a great chef, Larry Forgione, who's considered the godfather of American cuisine. Kind of looks like the godfather.
Yeah.
And he brought the restaurant that I helped him work in, 100% farm and table. We'd go to the farms, butcher the animals, bring them to the restaurant,
Wow.
prepare them, and utilize all the local ingredients. So that's one of the big things I learned was it's about cooking, but it's also about honoring the product and the ingredients,
Sure.
which is
Sure.
something that I want to bring to this area.
Right.
Yeah, we won't go to the extremity of the movie Burnt, when you have to give in and
Of course.
say that the turbot was a turbot halibut. Yeah. Apologize to the turbot. Yeah, we're not going that far.
Right.
But yeah, we
Somebody needs to apologize for a piece of meat I'm making.
yeah, but I mean, but we are again, you know, as we've had our conversation, Thomas, is that we make it, you know, I buy good product, that way it's a good meal when you come in here and enjoy it.
Right.
So, you know, in today's world, I mean, just like some great local chefs in this town, which you would know that do the same thing, and that's why they're very successful for over 5 to 20 years.
Right.
Going back to your pork chop, we don't have to do that much to it.
Right.
You know, it's a great product.
Sure. You start with quality, that you put out a quality dish. So
Yeah.
that's great. What was your first culinary job? Obviously, you touched on that a little bit, but what did you do in the kitchen? Were you a dishwasher? Did they throw you? I mean, obviously, a lot of chefs I know start as a dishwasher. It's
should.
kind of the
They
pit
should.
where you got to learn, get in there, and then you know.
You started before me, way before me, so you can go first.
Well, yeah, you're dating my age, thank you. But it you know, back in when I grew up in the business, it was 1,400 dinners a night.
Wow.
It was big time restaurants, and I was down in Fort Lauderdale, and basically what it came down to is that you kind of went wherever the problem was at, and you helped fix it. I started when I was 10 years old in that business, if I needed to be in the salad area or the pantry back then, or I had to be in the dish room, it is what it is. You know, back then you had 15 line cooks on line, you had 10 dishwashers and so forth. So it was a monster in itself, and that's what gave me the work ethic to really push it out, and that's where I'm at now.
Sure.
Yeah.
And Ryan?
I actually started when I was 14, working on weekends with my stepdad at a Cuban restaurant that was a little north of Sebastian Inlet.
Okay.
And I'd go in there and get started on the mojo pork, put them in a cajachina pit, and make the Cuban sandwiches for weekend money.
The pit you're talking
$5 a day.
the pit you're talking about is at like a China, what they call a China box.
Yes.
Very
yeah.
similar to
yeah,
that.
so you know, the county won't let you dig a pit, so
Right.
but that's how they did it in Cuba, and you know,
Okay.
that was my first job.
Very interesting boxes for that. It's a box with a grate. You put the whole pig in there, and then the coals actually sit on top of a metal lid for that, and then the heat radiates down and through. So it's a very unique way of cooking.
It's like an above ground pool for a pit.
There you go.
Yeah.
Absolutely. All right, so let's dive in here. Some more questions. If you had not become a chef, what profession do you think you would have chosen?
Baseball was my first love. And then while I was cooking, I met a few musicians and we started jamming, and I love that. But, you know, both of those, you can swing and miss and strike out on those. So
I notice a common trend with a lot of chefs that they actually are into music as well. Music is a creative form of expression, as is being a chef, putting that food on that plate, making it look
very
beautiful and taste delicious. So it's very more common than you think that a lot of chefs are musicians. Chef Chuck Arnold of Fire and Wine, he plays guitar, I believe. Several other chefs I know in town, I've followed them on social media and I see them jamming out to music. So it's a very common thing for chefs to do something creative beyond the kitchen.
Well, it gives them a relaxation point. And to answer your question on my part was, ironically, it was, I was told to be a chef back when I was 13 years old. Actually, I was going to get sent to Europe and go through culinary training in France. And of course, I didn't speak French, and I was scared to go by myself, so I didn't go.
Sure.
So my whole life would have been totally different as at this point in time. But it really goes. The real factor was I ended up going, instead of going to culinary school, I went to business school. I went to Emory down in Fort Lauderdale, and at that time, that was the shift of getting education and learning how to do restaurants, build them and own them and so forth.
Sure.
As a chef. But other than that, yeah, I probably would have been a stockbroker.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Interesting.
Totally opposite of what I'm doing now.
It's not very creative, but
Well, the creativity is trying to catch that. It's like making your dish and hoping that you're going to enjoy it.
right.
It's the same idea of picking certain companies that
Okay.
are financial bases are right, and hopefully, cross your fingers because you don't have control of anything.
Sure.
That it works itself out and that focus that you're trying to go with. So,
Right,
yeah.
right. All right, well, moving on here again with some additional questions on my list. What's your favorite ingredient to work with? I know this is a tough question for most chefs because they like to work with what's in season. There's not one specific product, but tell me a little bit about, if there's a multiple products, or at least just if there's one in mind that sticks out to you.
A tougher question would be what's my favorite dish to prepare, and that. But ingredient-wise, one of my secret ingredients that I love using that I didn't get a chance to make this year, but hopefully in the spring I will, is pickled ramps.
Pickled ramps. Interesting.
Ramps,
I've not seen that.
wild spring onions from the Appalachians, and they're only around for a couple weeks, but when you pickle them, you got them for the whole year, and you can chop them up, mix them into salsa verde salads, and then the vinegar I actually use more as just seasoning things because it's super garlicky and acidic.
Sure.
So dressings, vinaigrettes, stuff like that.
So I'm not that familiar with a ramp, and our viewers may not be either. Tell me a little bit about the
So they grow in the high elevations of all along the Appalachian Mountains, and they look kind of like a scallion with wider leaves.
Okay.
And they grow
Wild.
usually.
Oh,
yeah,
they do?
Yeah,
Okay.
you can't cultivate them. They've tried.
Oh,
But they grow usually like around middle of April to June. I'd say May. But yeah, they get bulbs anywhere from that big to about that big, and they're super garlicky and very tasty.
anything like a green onion flavor, or a little more towards the
It's-
garlic?
It's a little more towards the garlic.
Yeah, it's more aggressive.
Okay.
It's funny you said that because he kept texting me 2 years ago, hey, I need to, I'm going to bring down these ramps and we're going to do all kinds of stuff with it. Ironically, I used to live in Asheville, and I used to have the same ideas of trying to get those and use them. We used to use them for salad, for garnish, and what have you, but it has a different flavor to it.
Sure. Interesting.
And as far as my answer is, from being in all the different parts of the world and here in Florida and being a Floridian, it's always a seafood aspect to it. And if you can have fresh seafood, and that's quality again,
Right.
and that you can move that product out within a day or two. Ryan is, as we're working on our next menu outlay, is that ceviches that we can do upstairs on Havana nights,
Which
and
pickled ramps go great with.
pickle ramps. There we go. Pickle ramps will be in every dish upstairs all the time.
Well, I look forward to trying it. Then.
Yeah. So that's what we have a lot of opportunities on this property, and we have many different businesses inside of itself, and that's why I brought Ryan back into the mix.
Awesome.
Yeah.
What's your favorite kitchen tool to work with? Is there anything specialty, or I'm going to guess and say it may be a knife. I've heard that answer more often than not, just because of the
That's a
versatility. But I was
cliche
just
answer.
I want to see what your opinion is. What is your favorite kitchen tool to work with?
Either be spoons or cast iron pan.
Okay.
Spoons, when you're flipping, you have the opportunity to also base with them and
Okay.
plate with them, and it's kind of like an extension of your paws.
Sure.
And then cast iron, when you're trying to get that hard sear on a steak or even scallops, it just creates that whole even cooking, and then you can also make a sauce in there and still hold the heat, retain it.
Sure.
Yeah, because it's not different qualities or different types of metal into a pan, but
Sure.
honestly, as an owner, my biggest thing is that everything works when I come in the morning.
Sure.
And do creperie, that everything turns on, the ovens work, the stove, you gotta have a stove.
Yours would be electricity.
That and gas. Yes, I like the modern world, sir. Yes. As far as the knife goes, yeah, I think that's every universal tool, and the typical chef knife is the classic tool of every culinary profession or professional, and it still goes back to, you can use that as a, when we're dicing and chopping things, we use it as a shovel to carry it.
Sure.
So it really is an extension, like you said, of your hand.
As far as food costs, rubber spatula is also great. you're able to get everything.
Oh yeah.
As
Can't
long as they're
stress
not
that.
melted.
Yes.
Usually the handles are melted.
Sit too long on a hot
It's
pot
sitting
there.
inside of a pot, yeah.
I
And
got
it
you.
melts to the side. So now it's an L-shaped handle. Yeah.
Mine at home have a little chips in them, but
Yeah.
you know they're still working
That
for
means they
now.
work, yeah.
Tell me a little bit about where do you get your inspiration from when you're creating a dish? Do you have somebody like another chef that you follow on social media, or if somebody you previously worked with? You know, tell me a little bit about where the inspiration comes from for the dishes, you know, and the plating and things of that sort.
Going back to working with Larry Forgione, how he taught me about the ingredients, that's where the inspiration is, the ingredients. So depending on, you know, how gamey is the lamb, you know, how is the skin on the fish, am I going to leave the skin on or what's it going to go with, what time of year it is, like what ingredients do I have?
Sure.
That's where I get the inspiration for the dish.
Okay.
Mine, since I am in a different level of culinary, you know, we used to have books back in my day, you know,
Sure.
and so those books were either great hotels. You know, my first cookbook was out of I tell you that Waldorf Astoria. That was my
Oh,
first
wow.
cookbook. Yeah, that showed what was going on back in those days. Which, by the way, we're doing a 1920s theme for New Year's Eve.
Oh, very
for our menu
nice.
mix, and that's part of that motif. Even though we're not going to have forced meats and things like that, but
Right.
that kind of era.
Good.
Anyway, so what we're going to do is what I looked at was different books, like from Paul Bocuse to in my day it was Jacques Pepin, which is part of our breakfast concept.
Sure.
You know, mainly all the French, you know, type. That was my goal back then, was to be a French chef. So
Sure.
that's how I worked out. So,
Very good.
yeah.
Awesome. Well, we've come to the point in the show here where you guys get to talk about your restaurants and your business here and kind of brag a little bit about what you have going on. Maison Martinique is where we're sitting right now. We're in the dining room. Also here at the hotel, there is a bar upstairs known as Havana Nights. You want to elaborate a little bit on that and tell me a little bit about those businesses?
Well, I'm going to start with it, and Ryan can finish off with the ideas for the menu. So what we're looking at is that we're going to do, even though we do serve our 5 to 9 o'clock menu downstairs is the same as upstairs, and they have entertainment at 7 o'clock as well. But we're also looking at trying to change the crowd a little bit for more of an evening night. That it could be from after the theater,
Sure.
or down the street, to have a tapas or a small bites type menu, which is going to be again local seafood and so forth. And Ryan will take care of that part.
And that's for Havana Nights upstairs,
Havana
correct?
Nights,
Okay.
Yeah, so one thing that I've noticed around here, there's no like good late night spots for good food and live entertainment except on the weekends, and usually those are places that, you know, me getting older, I don't want to go to. But we're definitely going to try to appease to that crowd. You know, plates anywhere from $8 to $18, and the idea is for everybody to order the whole menu, try a bunch of little bites.
Nice.
We say tapas, but it's going to be in the Caribbean flavors, and again, seafood focus, and we're also going to be seafood focus moving forward down here a little more. But yeah, it's just something that's going to be fun, and hopefully it takes off and people enjoy it.
Great.
Music every night and good food.
And Chef, I know you've got a new project you're working on. I believe if you would like to talk about that, it's up in Miko, correct?
Yes. Yeah, I like to stress myself a little bit more.
Pizzaiolo over here.
Yeah. So if you're a culinarian, you can do any food product. You'll figure it out how to do it. So with that in mind, going back to the Wise Guys Kitchen, we took the Wise Guys, and now it's Wise Guys Pizza,
Oh, okay.
because my sons are Wises, and
Three wise men.
Three wise men.
yeah, I have pictures to show that. Anyway, so what we're doing is we took an opportunity of a person, another pizza chef that was having some issues, and we ended up buying him out. We took over his spot. It's on Mika Road, just before Barefoot Bay on US 1, and it's a whole different market, whole different marketplace.
Sure.
A whole different menu concept. But what we've inherited was we took his good recipe for dough, pizza dough, as well as the sauces and so forth, and his little trickeries of how he makes a good almost like a New York style pizza.
Nice.
We learned that we don't have the SAG test. It's a firm pizza, and that was running right now Monday through Friday. Hopefully, eventually 7 days a week down the road. Again, as we all know in this world, staffing is the biggest biggest issue. Yeah. So again, that's a whole nother creative niche. Maybe I'll open more of those down the road too. It seems to be sometimes less work than these fancy restaurants as we go through our process.
That's no fun though.
Yeah, well, you know, well, you know what? That's why you get other people to run it.
So is this place open now, or is it
open right now?
Oh, it is open now.
It
Okay.
is open now. Yeah.
I know you've been working hard on getting it ready for open.
Right.
So
we actually opened up. It's probably been about 45 days. And
Okay.
We're getting through it. So my two sons are up there right now as we speak, working. And then my wife and I, we bounce back and forth, try to figure it out. So
Great.
You know, it's a younger person's staffing. You know, that's
Sure.
a typical pizza place.
Right.
You know, and so we're learning and we're growing. And you know, the biggest challenge in today's world is when you're making everything from scratch. Not every day is perfect.
Right.
And so either you have to readjust or so forth. So it's a constant learning thing.
Especially with the humidity, huh?
Well, the
Yeah,
dough.
and we don't have New York water, so what, you know, I have Brevard County water. But it still goes back to really understanding where you want to go with a point in business. And so I've learned that I can have a high-end restaurant, and I can have a lesser priced restaurant, and both worlds will always, in today's world, I'll always be able to pay the bills. That's what I look at.
Sure. Fantastic. All right, chefs, thank you so much for being on the show today. It was a pleasure speaking with you and learning more about your restaurants, and I do look forward to checking out Wise Guys Pizza here very soon. Thanks so much for tuning in to Chefs of Indian River County. We hope you enjoyed this episode. Give us a like and subscribe to the channel if you'd like to see more content like this. Until we eat again, thank you for watching.